AskReddit by Banana Cheese. What's one outdated system that is still widely accepted, even though newer, better ones exist? The airline reservation system has a fancy front end, but the back is running on very outdated technology. Technology in banking is very outdated as well. It's not unusual for them to be using systems that were built in the 80s and 90s and have had a million patches and add-ons. Most government computer systems. You would be shocked how many incredibly important systems are ran on 20-plus-year-old programs. 20 years old would be charitable. Batch transfers that take 1-2 days. Good news. The US Federal Reserve is implementing a new system that's supposed to be ready later this year. https://www.moderntreasury.com/learn/what-is-fed now close bracket. Myers-Briggs. The most useful information one can get from the Myers-Briggs test is how much stock other people place in its results. Checkbooks. This is 100% just an American thing. My husband is over 40 and when he moved from Europe to the USA he marveled at checks because he'd never seen one before, let alone had to use one. Addiction treatment. Most rehabs use abstinence only and AMP 12-step, which has reported success rates of 5-20%. There was a scientist working in Finland who came up with the Sinclair method, which uses therapy and AMP naltrexone to reduce alcohol cravings. It has a reported success rate of 70-80%. And medical orgs won't even try it. Millions of lives ruined because people would rather punish addicts than treat them. And, as a documentary highlighted, because thousands of for-profit rehabs would go out of business. It's not just that they are ineffective, but I have heard from people who attended that the focus on religion is something that many people don't like and can feel cultish. Income tax in the US. There's no reason why it needs to be this complex. There's so many ways to mess up, and then you get studied and find if you screw up somehow. If they already knew the figures, why must you figure it out again? Because tax prep companies keep lobbying to keep it that way. Fax. Even though you can scan and email a PDF of a document in like 30 seconds, you'd be amazed the number of vital government functions still relying on fax. Places that think a fax is your signature but a photocopy, or an email is a copy. Sometimes people are just morons, especially the lawmakers. The way benefits are handled. Fraud figures are surprisingly low, and they waste billions going after that small percentage, and denying people benefits they're actually entitled to, when they could handle it via HMRC, or operate on the honor system. They deny benefits because it's better for profits. They'll fight tooth and nail not to have to pay for that reason. Banking. Everything is done by computers. Why am I still waiting 2-3 business days for my money? Why is there no standard way to transfer money to other people without third-party tools like Zelle or Venmo? Most of the world, including developing countries, has immediate transfers. By that I mean less than 5 seconds for it to be processed. This whole spring forward an hour fall back an hour thing is on my last nerve. Here's an idea. Let's just stop doing that. In the United States we actually passed a law and tried it 50 or 60 years ago. The negative backlash from the population once they actually experienced not having it caused it to be put back in place a year later. Imperial system. Metric is better by a mile. Doing our own taxes instead of the gov sending us a bill or a refund. First past the post. It's the only system where you win by actually losing. You got 43% of the vote? Cool story. That means the other 57% didn't vote for you, but because their vote is split multiple different ways, 24% here, 11% there etc., you have won. Congratulations. And in our ridiculous hung parliament situation in the UK, both the big parties fall short of an outright majority. The larger of these two parties then has to engage in horse trading to see how many of the losers they can bring on board in order to get over the line as a working majority. It's so shit and just leads to the dog tail wagging the St. Bernard, which is a big distraction that utterly derails the larger party's entire agenda. We saw it in 2017 with the Tories and UP, and it's happening in Scotland right now. Quite a few SNP policies are only there because the Greens steered them into it. QWERTY keyboards were designed for typewriters where common letter pairs were put far apart to prevent the hammers of the typewriter hitting one another. Dvorak, Colomac and Workman are all superior layouts. The issue is that they aren't enough of an improvement to overcome the inertia of QWERTY. Here is an excellent video from the engineer guy. https://www.youtube.com/watch?znubl90ti explaining it all. The only way I can think of ever changing it is to 1. Start teaching newer layouts in schools, and 2. Make keyboards that are electronic where you could shift between formats. That way parents could use the same single keyboard and just flip it back and forth. Newer is kinda in context. But tipping, at least in the US, is insane. Prices are sometimes 1/3 higher than listed. Tax plus a decent tip, and sometimes even some BS service charge. HIPAA requiring patient medical information to be faxed when far more convenient and secure solutions, internet and encryption, exist. It's because faxing is written into the language of the law itself. It doesn't anymore. Lots of doctors will email nowadays to an address officially provided. I think an exception was granted. IPv4 networking. IPv4 addresses have run out. We're relying on hacks like NAT and even worse hacks like CGNAT or DS Lite or other tunneling protocols. Cloud providers are regularly increasing IPv4 prices. IPv6 is more modern, easier to configure, easier to use, and it restores end-to-end connectivity just like the internet was always intended to be. You can open a single port for multiple machines instead of having to rely on port mappings, and you don't need UNP. Just need to open ports in a firewall. Eventually, everyone will need to support it anyways. But way too many companies are like, why bother? IPv4 is working fine and refusing to make their stuff support IPv6 properly. Pennies. Why do we still have pennies? I believe it costs more than a penny to make a penny. The zinc industry. No, seriously. They spend millions of dollars, not in pennies of course, to make sure that pennies still exists even though literally nobody uses them at this point since they're literally worthless at this point. Most of our nuclear silos still use 16-inch floppies for their security codes. They're really hard to hack into. SAP? USA not putting tax on prices. USA signing and not using chip and pin contactless. What? Most places in the US these days have contactless payment. At least in my experience. Fax. As someone who works in it, I hate that it still exists. It's funny how people still hiss and shit that it's very secure when it's vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks and social engineering schemes. Also, someone can literally snatch the fax off the printer tray and walk out. Most fax machines are just out in the open for anyone to see, lol. SAP. Stop all productivity. Sending faxes.